So here is a video that I'll be playing for you. I want you to take your time and watch this video. Take your time and watch this. This is a well-detailed video from a very wonderful journalist in Nigeria, David Hundeyin, and he's here going to give you a detail with very many proof on how the CIA has already orchestrated what is happening today. And so I want you to watch it, and yes, check it out.
There's an African boycott going on right now because of disrespect to the Black American community. This is about the survival of Black Americans. We're in a competition. Africans and Latinos are fighting Black Americans for resources.
So yeah, apparently this is a thing that has been happening over the past week. A group of African Americans calling themselves the Foundational Black Americans and American Descendants of Slavery apparently decided that it would be a great idea to stage an economic boycott of businesses owned by African immigrants in the United States. The context here is that a boycott is one of the most potent economic and political statements that it's possible to make. For example, it was a global boycott that brought down South Africa's apartheid regime. And it is the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against Israel that has led to some very panicked and interesting responses from the White House. Basically, a boycott is a geopolitical tool that is usually reserved for the very worst of the worst. So how the hell do small businesses owned by African immigrants in the US qualify for a boycott by anyone? Least of all by those who share the closest cultural and genetic ties with them, who live in the same neighborhoods with them, and with whom they have intermarried so much that in many cases it is no longer functionally possible to distinguish them from each other. The answer is, they don't. What you're actually witnessing is a US secret intelligence operation. As always, you don't have to take my word for it, because the US government itself has done an excellent job of documenting exactly what is happening and why. What you're looking at is a document called Memorandum 46, a confidential memo presented by former US National Security Advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski under President Jimmy Carter on March 17, 1978. Yes, Jimmy Carter, nice guy, Nobel Peace Prize winner, him. So the context behind this document was that at the time, America's racist, hostile, imperial foreign policy towards South Africa, which offered full support to the apartheid regime, had gained attention in America and had become a big political issue among African Americans. Just a decade before that, the US had also suffered great international embarrassment at the UN because of this very issue. The US government feared that political collaboration between Black people in Africa and Black people in the US would lead to the re-emergence of Pan-African ideals and potentially collective action by the African voting bloc, which made up 1/3 of the UN. It also apparently feared that this political collaboration would refocus Black American attention onto Israeli apartheid in Palestine, and Black people would naturally side with the Palestinians over the Israeli settler colonists. All of this might apparently force a change in US foreign policy towards South Africa and toward Africa as a whole, which according to Brzezinski was a no-go area. US imperial policy toward Africa, according to this document, could not be allowed to change under any circumstances, because the status quo of Black Africa is, I quote, important for US political, economic, and military interests. His words, not mine. As a result, Brzezinski's memo stated that, quote, appropriate steps need to be taken inside and outside the country in order to inhibit any pressure by radical African leaders and organizations on the US Black community, for the latter to exert influence on the policy of the administration toward Africa. In other words,
oh, can't be having any of that now, can we?
So what were these appropriate steps? I'll just read them out without adding or subtracting anything. This is the highest level of the US government in its own words. Bear in mind, this is a publicly available document which you can Google and read for yourself. Specific steps should be taken with the help of appropriate government agencies to inhibit coordinated activity of the Black movement in the United States. Special clandestine operations should be launched by the CIA to cause division among Black African radical national groups and their leaders. To elaborate and bring into effect a special program designed to perpetuate division in the Black movement and neutralize the most active groups of the leftist radical organizations representing different social strata of the Black community, to encourage division in Black circles. To preserve the present climate which inhibits the emergence from within the Black leadership of a person capable of exerting nationwide appeal. I take special note of the next two. To work out and realize preventive operations in order to impede durable ties between US Black organizations and radical groups in African states. To support actions designed to sharpen social stratification in the Black community, which would lead to the widening and perpetuation of the gap between successful educated Blacks and the poor, giving rise to growing antagonism between different Black groups and a weakening of the movement as a whole. Now, does any of this sound strangely familiar to you? Has American foreign policy in Africa recently become a political issue among African Americans? Maybe an issue so big that it led to protests and the unprecedented spectacle of a US AFRICOM commander bumbling and stumbling over himself on Kenyan TV. Has the US government recently suffered great international embarrassment over racial discrimination in the US and its support for foreign apartheid regimes? Has the Palestinian issue increasingly become a front-burner topic, both in Africa and in the African-American community? Is an African country leading the genocide case against Israel at the ICJ? Are African countries asserting their sovereign right to not support Israel? Are African-American activists leading aid expeditions to Gaza, creating negative publicity for Rambusan's Middle Eastern love child? Is there increasing political awareness on both sides of the Atlantic that Africans struggling with artificial deindustrialization and non-representative leaders who don't answer to them, and African-Americans struggling with systemic poverty, discrimination, and exclusion from the American economy share the same ultimate imperial enemy? And if, as it was in 1978, the answer to all these questions is yes, then what preventive measures and actions could the CIA be taking to impede durable ties between US black organizations and radical groups in African states, and to sharpen social stratification in the black community, giving rise to growing antagonism between different black groups and a weakening of the movement as a whole? Sometimes we have more answers than questions.
There you have it, man. There you have it. Sometimes we have more answers than the questions. And so, like I always say, it's difficult to bring us together, but very easy to divide us. Already, yes, we understand. Yes, immigrants should have respect for the people they met there, for Native Americans, and vice versa. I'm just saying that we can always understand, that what is causing the divide is not really what we think. And as we fight each other, the enemy watches and laughs. So we need to understand that this is actually a plot, it's a big CIA agenda. We have to try as much as possible to understand that the tongue and the teeth do quarrel, but then at the end of the day, they settle. I hope that we work out an amicable solution and we continue to coexist together, just like we had the blacks in diaspora rise up and support the Traore movement, and then we have the South Africans who are going against the Israeli genocide, and then we have the blacks in America and then the Africans right here standing together to fight against injustice. We had that movement all around the world in 2020, where we had blacks everywhere, regardless of our ancestry, regardless of our history, regardless of whatever it is, our color, skin. We had every blacks together come together for the George Floyd movement. Just like we've always come together, we should continue to stick together, because it's very much important that we understand that we have a common enemy and we have to stay together to defeat this common enemy. And we should not repeat the same mistake that were repeated during the colonial era, where the white men were able to divide and conquer us. We must understand that we need each other now more than ever, for nothing beats black unity. So that's it from me to you today. Let me hear your take in the comment section, and I'm always open to hear it. Thank you very much, and see you next time.